In this video, I'm going to share 5 things that I've recently learned and applied to my training that have had a huge impact on my gains, and I'm pretty confident that they will do the same for you. Quick backstory, I've been training naturally for 12 years. I started at 14 and I'm now 26. As most of you probably know, the first few years of training are when you make the most noticeable gains. After about 3 or 4 years, things slow down, and by the time you hit the 10-year mark, progress becomes more incremental. So for the simple fact that I'm still making noticeable progress, and these 5 things have played a huge role in that, I figured they are definitely worth sharing in a video. So let's dive in. Number 1, warming up properly. Now, warming up isn't just about doing some light cardio and a few random stretches. It's about prepping your body for the specific demands of the workout you're about to do. I've recently put a lot more focus on mobility drills, taking dynamic stretches to the next level and being more intentional with it. Meaning you won't find me warming up my ankles if I'm training shoulders. I don't go overboard, and I'll spend a maximum of 3 minutes on this. A big part of my warm-up routine is pyramid sets for the first exercise of the session. My approach is pretty laid back, but I've noticed it really helps prime my body for the heavier sets. And here's how I do it. I start with 3 warm-up sets using a lighter weight. About 30% of my working weight for 12 reps, then 60% for 8 and 90% for 4. I keep the rest time minimal between each warm-up set, just long enough to catch my breath. Then I'll take 2 minutes of rest before diving into my working sets. During that time, I'll throw in a few more dynamic stretches to stay limber. I like to feel my joints warm and my CNS prepped before getting into the building stage of the workout. And speaking of warmth, that's why I always start my sessions with a hoodie on, and it's not for the pump cover effect, so when I take it off mid-session, people are like, oh my god, he's so ripped. Training with layers on just speeds up the process of heating up, and I will usually take it off only when I start to feel slightly uncomfortable. Depending on the session and season, this would happen sooner or later, so just guide by feel. Number 2 is slowing down my tempo. These days I primarily train for hypertrophy rather than chasing strength. Don't get me wrong, strength is important, and I used to love to train for 1 rep maxes, but I've shifted my focus for something that's more sustainable for the long term. I want to be able to train for the rest of my life without accumulating injuries left, right and center, and I'm happy with looking like I could bench 180 kilograms without having to do it. I know I still don't look like it though. For hypertrophy, one of the most important factors is time under tension. It's about controlling the movement and really feeling the muscle work. I keep my rep range around 8 to 10 reps, but the key is how slowly you move through those reps, as you can do 8 reps in 10 seconds or in 40. My tempo now varies depending on the movement, but it's generally in the range of 3 to 5 seconds on the negative, a short pause at the bottom, and then an explosive lift on the way up. The best time under tension for hypertrophy falls between 35 to 50 seconds per set, so if you aim for 8 reps with an average of 4-second negative, you will hit that sweet spot. I found out that slowing down my tempo and focusing on the time under tension has made a massive difference lately. Number 3 is adding a post-exhaust set. If you really want to maximize muscle growth, you've gotta learn to embrace the pain. That's where post-exhaust sets come into play. These sets push your muscles to the absolute limit, activating the fast twitch muscle fibers that are most responsive to growth. When you do a set of 8 reps, you're essentially doing the first 6 reps just to get to the last 2, which are the reps that give you the most growth. Now, what I like to do is to push that barrier further. After finishing a set, I rest for about 5 to 10 seconds, just long enough to let some of that lactic acid settle, and then I jump straight into another movement to failure. For example, let's say I'm doing incline dumbbell presses for 4 sets of 8 reps. After my set, I rest for about 10 seconds, and then I'll go straight into slow negative push-ups to failure. I usually get another 5 to 8 reps at that point, and that extended time under tension makes a huge difference in how my chest and shoulders feel afterwards. It's not going to be pretty, but it's great. Number 4, isometric holds as finishers. Continuing the theme of pushing through the pain, I've recently added isometric holds as finishers to my sets. They're a great way to target muscle endurance and push the muscle to complete fatigue after doing the post-exhaust set. I used to be terrified of overtraining and junk volume, but after experimenting with different techniques on myself, I found out that my body responds great to this style of training. For example, after completing a set of incline dumbbell presses followed by a post-exhaust push-up set, I'll finish with an isometric hold in the contracted position of the push-up. I hold it until failure, and usually it's not a long hold, but the burn is painfully good. I didn't think much of isometric holds at first, but they've turned out to be a fantastic addition to my routine. I've learned that, like with most things, it's not always about theory, it's about testing things out and seeing how your body responds. And in my case, it's been great. And finally, number 5, we have volume allocation. As you get more advanced, your training program becomes more unique. It's not longer about just hitting everything twice a week. Not every muscle group responds the same way, and you need to adapt your volume and frequency accordingly. For example, my quads respond very well to training, so I can get away with training them just once a week. But for muscles like my rear delts, which tend to take a bit longer to respond, I have to train them 3 times per week to get a similar growth rate response. So don't be afraid to have a completely different split from what others are doing. As long as you stick to the fundamentals of good exercise selection and progressive overload, you'll do just fine. Experiment, see what works, and adjust accordingly. If you're a complete beginner, some of these techniques might be too much for you now, as you don't have enough muscle conditioning and maturity to handle this type of volume. Out of the 5, I'd suggest to primarily focus on warming up properly, nail down the time under tension, and make sure you perform the exercises with correct technique. And in time, you can slowly add another one in. In terms of volume allocation, there's no point to overstress it if you've been working out for less than 2 years. Your main goal right now is to grow and maximize the newbie gains as much as possible. After 2 years of proper lifting, you'll be able to identify with ease which muscle groups need more work and which ones can get by with less volume. But if you've been training for over 2 years, feel free to go all in on these. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you're probably gonna like this one as well, and I'll catch you tomorrow.